Hello, everyone. Welcome to Finding India podcast episode 3. I'm your host Anirudhen, and with me is my friend Ramana Krishnan. And my email ID is anirudh.n@gmail.com. In case of any queries, I'm reachable there. Today, the topic we'll cover is what is astrology in itself, what how does it all come together, what perspective are we looking at in this podcast with respect to astrology, and what we will be looking briefly at the 9 planets and their psychological significations. So without much ado, we'll start. Okay. And thanks again, Ramana. And Ramana had raised a lot of these issues in the previous podcast. That's why we will start from the very foundation level of what does it mean, what is astrology, and what does it mean, how does it work, etc. Astrology. Okay, interesting. So we are all in this world, right? It seems very arbitrary, right? A certain data point of your birth time determining your entire future, determining everything which is there. uh, it's like it doesn't make sense, at least from anything we've learned across in a conventional sense. We believe that we are function of our hereditary, our genes, maybe our education. We've grown to analyze things from an external point of view, right? We use certain measurable, quantifiable things by which we understand ourselves, our efforts, how much we put in. A lot of these are characteristics on how we try to evaluate ourselves. I would ask the fundamental question is, why are we individual? What makes us different? What gives us our uniqueness? What is our individuality? Why are we so different? Are we just a random function floating around in the universe where without any purpose or meaning, we are just a random set, a life which is being formed without any purpose? The Purushartha in India, I'm coming from an Indian philosophical psychological context. Indian philosophy typically looked at it in terms of the Purusharthas, which was covered in the previous episode. It believed that man has got 4 goals: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And by following these goals, man finds purpose in life and in living and seeing creation as it is. Now, coming to what does astrology mean and how should we use it? The Indian way would be that we are a certain resonance as of our birth time with the capacities of the universe. When does life enter us? Now, these are again more trickier questions, because isn't the womb also there? Aren't we alive in the womb as well? Why should the birth time be the one which is considered to be the more? Some astrological schools look at the conception time as well. There are certain techniques which people use to try and calculate the conception time. Isn't that the point of time where life is built at all, is first initiated at all? To be honest, I don't know why birth time exactly works. Okay, I look at it purely from a practitioner's point of view, and I'm saying that it works because birth time gives that psychological depth. Now, what is the psychological depth? We come to the plan. Ramana, you mentioned last time about sun sign, zodiac, etc., right? And we have this newspaper astrology which says that, oh my God, 1 in 12 people have the same future, etc. We'll come to okay. We see that in twins, they have the same sun sign, they have the same nurture, nature, environment. They've got identical twins who have mostly more or less the same DNA. How do they differ? What gives them their differentiation, if you will? This is where we come to a certain conception of how astrology was constructed in India. It uses something called divisional charts, which vary with the minute in India. These are certain. What is a divisional chart? Okay. We divide the zodiac into different parts, right? We last time we had discussed about the zodiac. So let's take a circle of 360 degrees. Okay. If you divide it in 12 parts, which is the 12 signs of the zodiac, it is 30 degrees for each zodiac. Now you divide that each rashi or the sign of 30 degrees, you divide it into different parts. Indian astrology keeps dividing it up to 144 parts. Okay, there are some people who divide it even up to 300 parts. Okay.
You're saying that the 30 degrees gets divided further into 144 parts, or You're saying that 360
140,
degrees is
no,
divided.
30 degrees. 30 degrees. Each individual sign gets divided into 144 parts.
Right.
Okay. So imagine the level of division that we go into. So now even that takes a lot of time, right? Now, what is the dynamic element within? What is astrology all about? We've heard a lot about sun signs, Ramana, right? They're common. In the Indian system, something which is very common is nakshatra or the star sign. The nakshatra terminology is also very close to the zodiac terminology. It's related, but we use something different. We use in it's very fundamental. It's part of Indian astrology. It's unique to India also. It divides the cosmos, the 360 degrees, into 27 parts. Okay, and each part is called a nakshatra, and the moon's position is considered to be important there. Now, why sun, why moon? We will get into this when we come to the planets. Okay, and so now we've come to different ways of differentiating zodiac. We've already spoken of sun sign and moon sign. The most important thing left to understand now is something called the ascendant or the lagna in an Indian term. Okay, now what is the ascendant? Ascendant shows the progress of the day or the horizon. The technical word they use is the horizon with respect to the sun's position. Okay. So let's say the sun, Earth moves around the sun in 365 days, right? Okay. So what it essentially means is the Earth covers 360 degrees around the sun in 365 days. So roughly there's 1 degree a minute, 1 degree every day. The Earth completes a rotation around the sun, right?
Right.
Okay. Roughly from an Earth's point of view, it appears as though the sun is moving 1 degree every day.
Right.
Okay. So now that relative motion, okay. So every day when the sun starts, it starts from a fresh, it starts on a different point in the zodiac, okay, in the 360 degree space around the Earth. So the starting point at the day of dawn, at dawn, is called the ascendant, okay. It's called the horizon of the planet. It's called the horizon, okay, of the cosmos. Now that horizon keeps changing every day until the next dawn. So it is roughly a cycle from dawn to dawn, which is around 24 hours. It's not exactly 24 hours, right? Because the sunrise time changes every day. Okay. So that dawn to dawn, it shows that the horizon is covered 24 hours because we've experienced the sun relative to the earth at all. The earth spinning, we've experienced it in a 360-degree way. Earth spins around, right? Its orbit also. Okay, so relative to the absolute position of the sun, it appears as though the earth is traveled 360 degrees.
No,
Not
but
appears. Yeah, tell me.
You're saying as a result of the rotation, every day, you're talking of the 360 degree.
Exactly. Yeah. It turns 360 degrees around the sun, right? That's why we don't have sunshine all the time in the equator at least.
Right.
Okay. So it appears as though it turns 360 degrees. Correct. Okay. But the sun also moves 1 degree every day around the earth because of the revolution of the earth.
Correct.
Okay. So that relative motion of the rotation and the revolution is covered by this point called the ascendant or lagna.
Right.
Okay. Why is this lagna important? Okay, when you're born, it represents you as an individual. Okay, it represents you as a function of the cosmos. Okay, and this ascendant is very sensitive to time, right? It changes by 1 degree of 360 degrees within a day. Correct?
Right.
Okay, so it changes 360 degrees within a day. So if I take 30 degrees of this and I start dividing it, 30 degrees would be roughly 2 hours in a day.
Right.
Okay, and I take the 2 hours and I start dividing that into 144 parts. Okay, so that is less than a minute. That is less than a minute.
Right, 120 minutes, 144
exactly.
divisions. Right.
Yeah, so that's less than a minute for every division to take place, right? Okay, so that's how sensitive birth time is with respect to astrology. Okay, so now we've come to this 144 part. I told you, right, that the relative position of all the planets, we keep dividing it further and further. The space is split into 144 planets. So when we come to this, every minute there is change, there is dynamism. Okay, while calculating the astrology itself, we come to the twin condition, right? Why are twins different? Identical twins, they have the same nature as well as the same nurture as per what we understand of conventional human psychology, right? They have the same genes, they have the same upbringing. Okay, but astrology has the tools to go further and describe how individuals are different at a very fundamental level. Okay, now next we come to how does this come into psychology. What is the psychological function of all of this? What is psychology? Okay, it is maybe the description of the mental processes of the mind, how we behave, how we interact, how we are. Okay, and all of this is what I would define as psychology. I'll have to look up the dictionary term, but broadly this is how I would describe psychology, as a sum function of all the mental processes, cognitive processes, perceptual processes, and how they're all integrated together for a human being. Okay. And we come to it. What is it that makes up a human being? Last time we discussed extensively about the role of the ego, right, in putting together a certain identity for us.
Right.
Okay. So now this identity, the ego, is considered to be the ahamkar. We spoke of Leo as a sign. If you remember right, we connected Leo to the ahamkar. The
Correct.
sun is the, we spoke of rulerships, which we said I will get more into in this place. Okay. So it's like the properties of Leo are represented by the sun. Okay. At least in this solar system. Okay. Ramana, if you were to think of it, right? The zodiac signs are spread as stars all over the cosmos. Correct? Right. In entirety of space. But the ownerships are all planets which are within the solar system.
Right.
Okay, so now to understand this dichotomy is to accept that within Earth or within this solar system or for a particular human species, this is how the lordship works. It's not universal, right? Suppose I were in some other planet or some other solar system and they had astrology, maybe the lordships would be different.
What do you mean by lordships would be different? You mean that in our context, the way we say that Saturn is ruling this particular sign and Saturn has a certain characteristics that we associate with. You are saying that in an alternate solar system, in the say an Andromeda system, it would have been different.
It will be different. I would say it will be. I don't know. I actually don't know. But I think it would be different because, I mean, it's not like the solar system is the center of the universe, right? It's just one planet in the middle of everywhere. So, okay. So coming back, let's look at it this way. So you could argue it is a certain arbitrary classification, but Ramana, the problem is, not the problem, the thing which we don't understand about astrology is, again, I am coming from a practitioner point of view, I don't know why the divisional charts should work. I don't know why the 144, why do our psychological characteristics exactly come around this way? I don't know. All I know is it works. Okay, if you ask me for a scientific explanation, maybe at a principle level, there seems to be some way in which we are psychologically linked to the cosmos, or creative or in energy, some way we are linked to the cosmos. But beyond that, I don't know. Somehow our ancestors seem to have come up with this framework and it works. Okay, I don't know.
So
maybe
I have a theory on this. Not that, I mean, maybe you can correct me on this. I am not by default a believer in most such things, right? But I have come around to think of it as an equivalent of a machine learning problem. The way in the context, essentially we throw a lot of variables, input variables and output variables at a particular problem in the context of machine learning. And there is a basically a correlation that we derive from it. The point I'm getting on to is that maybe because of so many divisions and so many sub characteristics that have gone into the astrology, maybe it's a similar point whereby some patterns have been detected and it's been, I mean, the correlation is what you are studying maybe.
So you're saying there's only correlation, no causation?
No. I don't care about causation. My point is that even if correlation is there, as long as it is useful and
Okay.
predictive,
Okay.
that is sufficient. Yes, we probably don't have an exact scientific
Causation.
principle behind it, and that would be the causation aspect of it. But if the predictive thing works,
Okay.
that's what would count, I would imagine.
The trick is, what does it mean to predict? Does the predictive thing work?
That's something that you would have to answer.
I'm not sure, Ramana, because in the Indian system, we look at it as a record of karma, and we say that this karma can be what you call this can be changed. Okay, it involves a lot of principles. So I think there could be causation, or in an Indian system, maybe we look at beyond causation. Okay, uh, so okay, we are going somewhat into a more philosophical note here. So I'll say that there's something called the gross body in an Indian system. There are different philosophy. There's a gross body. There's a subtle body of dreams. There's a gross body of outer world, etc., etc. There's a subtle body of dreams. There's a causal body of all impressions or deep sleep, etc. That's where when we talk of deep sleep, right? It's considered that we go into this causal body, and there is something beyond the causal body which comes to Turiya. The name of the podcast
Right.
quite kept in as Turiya is something which is beyond causation. So maybe we first have to come to the causal body, Ramana. Maybe uh, even all science, metaphysics, etc. What we are doing is fundamentally trying to understand the world through science, right? In an Indian sense, that is seen as something which is acting through the subtle body or the sukshma sharira or the dream body. Okay, it is all interaction within the conceptions which we have of the world and the universe. See, for example, when we are going into somewhat scientific digressions, but maybe we can do that. Is even Big Bang is a certain model, right? There's no standardized model yet. Fundamentally, for example, when we talk of the what do you call the grand unifying theory or
Mhm.
even string theory, we are talking of is why we are trying to do is we are trying to get together one theory which utilizes all the four forces of the world, right? Strong force, weak force, electromagnetic force, and gravitational force. We are trying to find one theory which explains all four of them, right?
Right.
Strong force, weak force, and electromagnetic forces have been integrated, but the gravitational force is the one which is being, which people are not quite able to integrate them. Okay.
Right.
If you remember right, Ramana, we had spoken of the Purusharthas.
Mhm.
So I would say that Artha, Earth, right? We talk about the four elements: Earth, fire, air, and water. Water and fire are not considered to be perceivable, not measurable. Okay. Earth is considered to be measurable, while air has only an interactional reality. Okay.
Right.
So we come to the gravitational force, which is purely a measurable force. Okay, so that would be under the Earth category of systems. Okay, we now come to the electromagnetic force, the strong force and the weak force, which are fundamentally interaction-based forces, which would come into air or karma. Okay, so maybe one reason why we are facing a difficulty of integrating is maybe they are different at a certain level. Now, where you draw the boundary, how you draw the boundary, maybe that's because of limitation of human consciousness in itself. Okay, but what I'm suggesting is they are fundamentally different things. The strong force, weak force, and the electromagnetic force are more interaction-based forces, while the gravitational force is a different force, which is a more measurable force. Okay.
I don't quite get the classification. Maybe we can delve into it at a later point. But basically, my point is that gravity is also interaction based, right? It's just that
Right.
it is
But
mass of body
but
dependent, and
Mars
the
is
other forces are also measurable.
the other forces are observed in an interaction level, while Mars is a mass. Sorry, not Mars. Mass is a measurable object, right? It's a tangible object which you're getting into.
Electromagnetic force, basically the charge,
Right.
is also measurable.
Charge is measurable, but
Charge is an inherent
it is an
property of a particular.
agreed. But is it a interactive? Does it have meaning outside? Only if there's a positive charge can there be a negative charge, right? Okay. there has to be an equivalence, right? There has to be a positive for a negative. Mass is not like that, right? There can be mass and mass, but it is not a interaction based. I mean, I'm not sure if I made the concept clear, but positive and negative are both interaction based, right? They're not independent in themselves. You can't have a positive without a negative.
Right.
Okay. While mass is independent as itself.
So basically, the point is that so you can have a standalone proton, or rather,
Can you?
I do not know. I would imagine
Even
that
I
we
do
can
not know, but
isolate standalone protons and standalone electrons. Maybe I am not sure actually.
How, if you isolate it, won't it react? You have to keep it in a vacuum, maybe at best, so that it doesn't react. But you're generating it from something, taking it to a vacuum. And if it comes to a normal material environment as it gets annihilated, right?
Right.
Okay. So definitely, it is fundamentally an interaction. All of the experiments which you observe, right, they're because you notice the difference in interaction. Are you actually able to visualize a proton or a neutron? Can you see it? No. Okay, not a proton neutron, but as you go further, when proton neutron, maybe through an atomic spectroscope, something, maybe at that level you could visualize it. I'm not sure. Okay, I don't know at what level, up to what level we can visualize. See, let's come to as fundamental as sight. Okay, do you think we see everything all the time?
No.
Okay, there are certain limits to our perception, right? I think it comes to into a matter of milliseconds, but maybe every millisecond, anything shorter of a millisecond, if a change occurs, we can't see it, right? Or it appears as though our eyes are active all the time, but they also have a certain response time within them.
There's a response time issue. There's also basically the visual light wavelength. There's that
That is
issue as
also
well. Like we can't see infrared, ultraviolet, and so on.
Yeah, that is true. That is a more structural way. That's a more structural thing. That is true. Okay, this is the limit in terms of the perception in itself, in terms of continuity. Okay, so I'm saying that a break is as fundamental as a void is as fundamental as a dynamic space in itself. Okay, so I know we've digressed off, but let's come back to astrology again because a lot of concepts around here do relate. Okay, it's a way of viewing things, visualizing things. And coming back, we were still at the zodiac signs. We've discussed the zodiac signs in the last episode. We were now looking at the planets and how astrology works. And you were talking of correlation when it comes to the divisional charts, right? Okay. And
Right.
so I'm saying there could be a certain causation. We spoke of the different bodies and came up to Turiya. Okay. And the causational body is not yet clear. All of science is now still working at the level of interaction. We are trying to perceive, we are trying to cut, but maybe as a species, there are certain limitations which maybe we'll have to look to transcend. Okay. I mean, at least Indian philosophy or psychology, however you call it, says that yes, we've learned to analyze things at a more subtle level in terms of conceptions, etc. There is a deeper reality when we go into sleep or deep sleep. Okay, there are realities which are deeper within us, which could give us even more fundamental answers. Okay, and so when we come to causation and correlation, I'm saying maybe there's a causation which people have perceived, or somehow they seem to have intuited and come to a certain way of viewing things, which at this point in time, I don't understand. I don't know if the scientific method has the tools to understand it as well at this particular point in time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll now go on to the planets. Okay, we start with the sun. Okay, the sun is given the most importance. It's considered to be the symbol of Atman, etc. Because it is considered to be the very source of life on this earth. Okay, and it is seen as the assert. Okay, I'm now going on to the psychological principle. When we assert ourselves, typically we are using the sun, our identity. I am. Okay, you could link it with Leo and the Ahankar. Okay, but the very word I comes from Leo. It comes from the sun. People also equate it to Jivatman or individuality or uniqueness. All of this comes from the sun, particularly when it is at Leo. Ramana, we also briefly discussed this ownership and lordship thing, which we keep coming back to. we discussed this, and I said that right from the solar system's point of view. Uh, See now, we discussed in detail about what are the the symbolism of the zodiac and the planets, right? Okay. Now all of this is knowledge which has been handed on the symbolism of the planets and the zodiac signs. Now, why should this symbolism work in this way? I don't know. Why have rishis or whoever has given us the zodiac? Why has the symbolism remain? I mean, has it remained like this? It's not based on the shape of the star alone, right? Okay, some of it is like but there's a lot of symbolism. There's a lot of characteristics which have been given to the zodiac sign, which aren't quite explainable by simple cause and effect, or just viewing it as, hey, this is a ram and these are, for example, I'm taking Aries. Aries is represented by a ram, and by visualizing the properties of the ram alone, we don't get all of the conceptions of it. Okay, or we visualize Taurus as a bull. There are certain interpretations of the zodiac sign which we take in, which have been handed down by tradition, and for some reason those interpretations work. When we come
And have they been constant, or are they invariant, or they are uh, variable as well in time?
The interpretations, is it, of the zodiac? They have been.
Not just the interpretation, but the conception that one has about a particular zodiac sign or about a particular planet, whether that is something that changes with time, or whether that is a constant.
I think that has been constant, Ramana, pretty much. Even within the East and the West, in terms of the conceptions, there isn't too much difference actually. Okay, some differences are there, but honestly, there isn't too much difference. So it has remained. Somehow that common knowledge has spread across. The symbolism and the interpretations of the planets and the zodiacs have remained. Of course, the divisional charts and Rahu Ketu are very unique to Indian astrology. Okay, but otherwise, the other zodiac signs and the seven planets, they do have a lot of common meaning across all traditions. Okay, so we've seen, so I don't know why the symbolism works. We've already seen the symbolism of the zodiac in the previous episode. We'll now go on to the symbolism of the planet. You asked me allocation. I'll give you a simple algorithm, if you will, of the lordships. Now, why this algorithm works, I don't know, but I can give you the algorithm. Okay, just hold. We spoke of the order of the zodiac, right, last time. So I'm saying hold Cancer and Leo, the fourth and the fifth zodiac sign, as the constant. Okay, just keep that in the center. Okay, and from 4 and 5, we go one step backwards from 4 and one step forward from 5. Okay, we go to 3 and 6. Okay, both of those signs, the lordship is Mercury, the closest planet to the sun.
What is 3 and 6? I mean, what's the zodiac sign associated with 3 and 6?
3 is Gemini, 6 is Virgo.
Right.
Okay, then we go to 2 and 7. Okay, Taurus is 2, Libra is 7. Okay, we come to the next planet from the sun, we come to Venus. Okay, so the lordship is allocated that way. Taurus is owned by Venus and Libra is also owned by Venus. We come one more step backward and forward. I mean, backward from this. We come to 1 and 8. We skip Earth, we come to Mars. So Aries is ruled by Mars, Scorpio is ruled by Mars. Okay, we take the next step, which is the 12th sign of the zodiac. We are going backwards. Okay, and we are coming to the 9th sign of the zodiac. Okay, the 12th sign of the zodiac is Pisces, while the 9th sign of the zodiac is Sagittarius. Both of these are owned by Jupiter, the planet after Mars. Okay, and finally, we come to the 10th and the 11th signs of the zodiac, Capricorn and Aquarius, which are both owned by Saturn, the planet after Jupiter.
Right.
Okay, so this is the algorithm for generating the ownerships, keeping Cancer and Leo as the center. Okay, Cancer is owned by Moon and Leo is owned by Sun. Okay, so this algorithm, if you will, gives a lot of details on what is it that is, how the zodiac lordships are allocated.
And the asteroid belt has no role to play in the context of astrology, is it?
Which one?
Asteroid belt. between Mars and Earth. Sorry, between Mars and Jupiter.
Okay, asteroid belt has not been given any significance. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's considered to be concentrated enough, etc. Western astrology does give some significance to, quiz quite a bit of significance actually to Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Again, they work at a very cosmic level in terms of, because their cycles are typically beyond the human span. It is.
But Neptune and Pluto were discovered in the past 300 years, right? I mean, Pluto was discovered about 150 years ago, maybe.
250 years ago, I would say. I think 750s or 1750s or something. But yeah,
that Neptune possibly.
Okay, but okay, for now they've given importance to it because they wanted to incorporate it. India has stuck on to this. We've used Rahu Ketu a lot more. From a psychological perspective, based on my observation and all that, I have seen this Rahu Ketu work a lot. We will cover this more in terms of basics of astrology and what are the dasha systems, etc. Okay, that time we will come more into Rahu Ketu, etc. But okay, so we've covered a lot of the basic principles of how astrology works, etc. We will stop this podcast at this point in time. I think we've covered a lot of ground on the principles underlying astrology, the allocation of lordships, etc. Next episode, we'll take up the planets and their ownerships.
But before we end,
queries?
Yes. So I
What
want to know, so basically, in the context of predetermined versus free will, how does this fit in?
How does this fit in? Is it?
How does the Indian astrological framework fit in the context of what is predestined or predetermined versus the free will that I believe free will exists, right? So how does that fit in this context?
Okay. Ramana,
because the point is that go on.
Keep this question going. I do have some version of an answer for this based on an astrological framework, but for that I will have to get into the planets and their properties. We've discussed the lordship properties of the planets. We will have to discuss some state called the exalted and the debilitated state. Okay. Then when we come to that, we will come to this free will versus determinism question.
Okay. So that's a good question to park for a future episode then.
Particularly, I think even the next episode when we are talking about the planets and their significations, I think we can park it for that.
Perfect.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Ramana.
And thank you, listeners. Keep pouring in your feedback as well. It helps us improve. And do suggest different topics that you would want Anirudh to explore as well. The email ID is anirudh.n@gmail.com.